Desolate hulks of warships dwarfing anything the Saurians had ever built, drifted in eerie silence amid a vast debris field, their eons-old human origins a startling revelation to the alien explorers. Captain Arthur Burns gripped his seat's armrests as the Magellan slipped through an uncharted sector of the Andromeda Galaxy. He squinted at the viewscreen, keen eyes probing the starry void ahead. Without warning, a clamor of chirps and buzzes erupted from the sensor station. Scans unveiled a jaw-dropping sight, scores of enormous derelict warships adrift in an asteroid-strewn graveyard. "Metals unknown to Federation science," the officer reported, her voice ringing with astonishment. Burns leaned forward, electrified by the tantalizing mystery unfolding before them. "Take us in for a closer look, nice and steady." As the Magellan crept nearer the silent ghost fleet, a shimmering warp rift yawned open beside them. An angular Saurian destroyer knifed into real space, guns swiveling to target the human vessel. The comm crackled with the clipped tones of Admiral Varys. "Withdraw immediately. This sector is forbidden to your kind." Burns shot back. "Last I checked, unclaimed space was free to any with the guts to explore it." Varys seethed but held his fire. "Very well, but we watch your every move." The Magellan and the Saurian ship flew in wary tandem amid the Titans. Impossibly, scans pegged the wrecks as 8 millennia old, predating all known spacefaring races. Their technology outstripped even the Saurians' mightiest warships by centuries. Burns and Varys exchanged uneasy glances, the staggering implications sinking in. "By the stars, what have we stumbled into?" Burns breathed. A sudden blip from the sensor console shattered the tense silence. A colossal dreadnought, easily 10 times the bulk of the other derelicts, loomed into view. Mass driver batteries studded its flanks. The unmistakable distortion of a charging axial superlaser shimmered along its prow. "Skipper, it's powering up," the sensors officer called. With a grinding rumble that shook the Magellan down to its bulkheads, the Cyclopean dreadnought's engines roared to full power. Running lights flickered and flared to steady luminescence, bathing the ancient hull in an eldritch glow. The derelict fleet was stirring like a long-slumbering beast, shaking off the dust of ages. "Helm, back us off to a safe distance," Burns barked, his voice tight. "Keep our shields up and weapons ready, just in case." On the viewscreen, the Saurian destroyer mirrored their movements, Varys clearly sharing Burns' unease at this unexpected awakening. The comms crackled to life, a deep, resonant voice filling the bridge. The words were strangely accented, the language an archaic form of Terran that had fallen out of use millennia ago. "Unknown vessels. This is Commodore Anaxagoras of the United Terran Confederation. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." Varys was quick to respond, his tone imperious. "Commodore Anaxagoras, I am Admiral Varys of the Saurian Imperium. This sector falls under the jurisdiction of the Galactic Federation. I demand to know the meaning of your presence here." Burns cut in before Varys could antagonize the situation further. "Commodore, I'm Captain Arthur Burns of the independent exploration vessel Magellan. We're on a mission of peaceful discovery. Could you tell us more about how your fleet came to be here?" A heavy silence followed, stretching for long, tense moments. Then Anaxagoras spoke again, his voice weighted with a weariness that transcended mere physical exhaustion. "Captain Burns, what year is it?" Burns glanced at Varys, seeing his own confusion mirrored in the Saurian's eyes. He swallowed hard before answering, the date feeling strange and portentous on his tongue. Another pause, even longer than the last. When Anaxagoras continued, his words carried the weight of history. "For 8,000 years, has it truly been so long? We were engaged in a desperate battle against a relentless foe, here in this very system. The odds were stacked against us, 100 to 1, but we fought with everything we had. We won, in the end, but the cost." His voice trailed off, the ghosts of ancient grief thick in the silence. "With our ships crippled and no sign of relief, I made the decision to power down, to drift in the void in the hope that we might one day be found by friendly forces. But 8 millennia?" Burns and Varys could only stare at each other in mute astonishment. The implications were staggering. A human civilization with technology far surpassing anything the Federation had achieved, thriving among the stars while their own ancestors were still huddled around campfires. It defied belief. Their awed reverie was shattered by the sudden shriek of alarm klaxons. The sensor officer's voice rose in pitch, edged with fear. "Multiple warp signatures inbound, Captain. Configuration matches Zorgoth battlecruisers." A new voice, harsh and grating, overrode the comms. "All ships, this is Commander Jarl of the Zorgoth Ascendancy. Power down and prepare to be boarded. This graveyard and all its treasures now belong to us." Anaxagoras' reply boomed like thunder, filled with righteous fury. "I am Commodore Anaxagoras of the United Terran Confederation. I answer to no one, least of all dishonorable scavengers. This is your only warning. Withdraw or be destroyed." Jarl's response was a harsh bark of laughter. On the view screen, the Zorgoth fleet surged forward, weapons arrays glowing with baleful energy as they charged. The Olympus Mons and its accompanying fleet surged towards the approaching Zorgoth battlecruisers. The Cyclopean dreadnought's axial superlaser crackled with barely restrained power before lancing out, spearing the lead Zorgoth ship. The stricken vessel erupted in a cataclysmic fireball, the shockwave buffeting its companions. "All ships weapons free. Let's teach these scavengers the price of their greed," Anaxagoras roared. The human warships thrummed with power as their mass driver batteries swiveled to target the Zorgoth formation. With a thunderous roar that shook the Magellan down to its bulkheads, the human fleet unleashed a devastating alpha strike. Shells the size of shuttlecraft hurtled across the void, smashing into the Zorgoth ships with unrelenting fury. The Zorgoths returned fire, their weapons stitching angry lines of destruction across the starfield. But to Burns's astonishment, their fire dissipated harmlessly against the human ship's shields, shimmering barriers of energy that shrugged off the onslaught with contemptuous ease. The human fleet sliced into the Zorgoth formation like a blade through flesh, their maneuvers precise and coordinated. They wove a deadly dance around their foes, always seeming to be one step ahead, as if they could read the Zorgoth's intentions before they even acted. Burns watched in awe as the ancient human vessels unleashed hell. Their weaponry was like nothing he'd ever seen, far eclipsing even the most advanced ships in the Magellan's database. And their skill in wielding it spoke of a long and bloody history, a legacy of warfare on a scale he could scarcely imagine. Beside him, Varys remained stone-faced, but Burns could see the astonishment in his eyes. The Saurian prided his species on their martial prowess, but even he seemed humbled by the power and precision of these ancient warriors. In mere minutes, the once proud Zorgoth fleet was reduced to drifting wreckage, the few survivors limping away in ignominious retreat. Burns let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Magellan Saurian vessel, this is Commodore Anaxagoras. Thank you for the warning." The human commander's voice was weary but resolute. "And I apologize for the hostile reception. In our time, trust was a luxury we could ill afford." "Commodore, I think we have much to discuss," Burns replied, glancing at Varys. For once, the Saurian seemed in agreement. "The implications of your presence here, it could change everything we thought we knew about galactic history." "Agreed. I invite you both to dock aboard the Olympus Mons. We have much to discuss indeed." The interior of the Olympus Mons was a marvel of utilitarian efficiency, all gleaming alloy and harsh lighting. But what struck Burns most was the crew. They were all human, not a single alien among them. It was a sharp contrast to the multi-species makeup of most modern ship crews. Anaxagoras greeted them in person, his bearing every inch the military leader. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his uniform crisp and his eyes sharp. He led them to a spacious briefing room, gesturing for them to take a seat. "Gentlemen, let me tell you a story," he began, his voice grave. "A story of a time when humanity stood on the brink, when we faced an enemy so implacable, so relentless, that our very survival seemed in doubt." Burns and Varys leaned forward, their attention rapt as Anaxagoras wove a tale of the United Terran Confederation and their titanic struggle against the Zirathi Dominion. It was a history long forgotten, a chapter of humanity's past, lost to the mists of time. But as Anaxagoras spoke, the pieces began to fall into place. A picture emerged of a human civilization far more advanced and far more warlike than anything Burns had ever imagined. A civilization that had carved out an empire among the stars, that had fought and bled and triumphed against all odds. And at the heart of it all, a question burned in Burns's mind, a question he could see mirrored in Varys's eyes. What had happened to this united Terran confederation? How had they vanished so completely from the annals of history, leaving no trace of their existence save for these derelict warships? It was a mystery that would shake the very foundations of the galactic order, and as Burns listened to Anaxagoras's tale, he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. As Anaxagoras falls silent, the echoes of his tale hanging heavy in the air, Burns leans forward in his seat. His brow furrows, a dozen questions burning in his mind. He meets Anaxagoras' gaze, his voice low and urgent. "Commodore, what happened to the United Terran Confederation? How did your war with the Zirathi end?" Anaxagoras' face grows somber, the weight of ages settling on his shoulders. He sighs, a sound laden with grief and regret. "In the final days of the conflict we were desperate. The Zirathi were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. We knew we couldn't win a war of attrition." He pauses, his eyes distant, seeing ghosts of the past. "So we developed a daring plan. A massive fleet, led by the Olympus Mons, would launch a surprise attack on the Zirathi homeworld. Our goal was to decapitate their leadership, to end the war in one fell swoop." Burns and Varys listen intently, the magnitude of such an undertaking sinking in. "But we were betrayed from within," Anaxagoras continues, his voice hardening. "A group of human collaborators, swayed by Zirathi promises of power and riches, sabotaged our warp drives. When we emerged from warp, we were far off course, and right in the midst of a massive Zirathi ambush." The room falls silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. "We were hopelessly outnumbered, but we fought valiantly, taking many of them with us. Ship by ship we were overwhelmed. In a final act of defiance, I ordered the fleet to overload their reactors. If we were to die, we would take as many of them with us as we could." He shakes his head as if still in disbelief. Just as the reactors reached critical mass, a strange spatial anomaly engulfed the remnants of both fleets. The next thing we knew, we were here, in this uncharted system. Burns and Varys exchange a look of astonishment. The idea of such a massive displacement in both space and time is staggering. "I hypothesize that the anomaly was triggered by the simultaneous detonation of so many warp cores, combined with the unique gravitational properties of this system's binary black holes," Anaxagoras explains. Varys, who has been listening intently, speaks up. "Commodore, the Galactic Federation has extensive historical archives. I offer to share them with you to help fill in the gaps of what happened in the intervening millennia." Anaxagoras nods gratefully. "Thank you, Admiral. And in return I offer to share the technological schematics of our ships. Perhaps they might aid in the defense of all sentient species." As Varys and Anaxagoras begin the data transfer, an urgent comm from the Magellan sensor officer cuts through the room. "Captain, long-range scans have detected a massive Zirathi fleet emerging from warp at the system's edge. Their numbers are far greater than the Zorgoth force we encountered." Burns and Varys exchange a grim look, the implications sinking in. It seems the ancient conflict, thought long dead, is reigniting before their very eyes. The Olympus Mons' bridge explodes into activity, crew members rushing to their stations. Anaxagoras strides to the command chair, his voice booming across the comm. "All ships, battle stations. I want full power to shields and weapons. Prepare to engage the enemy." Burns and Varys race back to their respective ships, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on their minds. As they take their positions on their bridges, they can see the Zirathi fleet on their view screens, a seemingly endless swarm of hostile ships. The Magellan and the Saurian vessel take up flanking positions beside the Olympus Mons, their own weapons primed and ready. The stage is set for a battle that will echo through the ages, a clash of ancient enemies rejoined after millennia of silence. As the fleets close the distance, weapons charging and shields shimmering, Burns grips his armrests tightly. He knows they are on the precipice of something momentous, a turning point in galactic history. The next few hours will decide the fate not just of those present, but potentially of every sentient species in the galaxy. The first volleys of fire erupt across the void, lances of energy and missiles streaking towards their targets. The battle is joined, and the future of the galaxy hangs in the balance. The Zirathi fleet surges forward, a swarm of gleaming silver ships bristling with weapons. On the bridge of the Olympus Mons, Anaxagoras studies the tactical display, his mind racing. He turns to Burns and Varys, his eyes alight with a desperate plan. "We can use our advanced technology as bait," he says, his voice urgent. "Lure them in close to the binary black holes, then spring the trap." Burns and Varys nod, seeing the wisdom in the plan. They quickly coordinate their ships' positions, the Magellan and Varys' Saurian vessel slipping into the sensor shadows cast by the massive gravitational anomalies. The ancient human fleet, led by the Olympus Mons, charges to meet the Zirathi head-on. Mass driver rounds and energy beams lance out, ripping into the enemy ships. The Zirathi return fire, their weapons splashing against the human vessel's shields. Anaxagoras grits his teeth as his ship shudders under the onslaught. Damage reports flood in, but he keeps his focus on the tactical display. Slowly, grudgingly, the Zirathi fleet is drawn deeper into the system, chasing the tantalizing prize of the ancient human technology. "Just a little further," Anaxagoras mutters, his hands gripping the armrests of his command chair. At a critical moment, Burns and Varys spring their ambush. The Magellan and the Saurian ship burst from hiding, catching the Zirathi in a devastating crossfire. Armed with the secrets of Anaxagoras' technology, their weapons cut through the enemy ships like a scythe through wheat. The Zirathi fleet reels, caught off guard by the sudden attack. Ships explode and veer off course, their formation falling into disarray. For a moment, it seems the tide of battle has turned. But then a massive shape emerges from warp, dwarfing even the mighty Olympus Mons. A Zirathi dreadnought, a behemoth of a ship bristling with enough firepower to lay waste to a planet. It ignores the volleys of fire from the human and Saurian ships, bearing down on Anaxagoras' flagship with single-minded purpose. Anaxagoras feels a chill run down his spine. He knows with cold certainty that the dreadnought's sole mission is to capture the Olympus Mons and the secrets it holds. He makes a decision, the only one he can make. His voice is calm as he opens a channel to Burns and Varys. "Captain Admiral, you need to withdraw your ships now." Burns' face appears on the view screen, confusion and alarm written across his features. "Commodore, what are you planning?" Anaxagoras smiles grimly. "What I must." He cuts the connection, then turns to his navigation officer. "Plot a course for the nearest black hole, full speed." The officer hesitates for only a moment before complying. The Olympus Mons surges forward, its engines straining as it accelerates towards the yawning abyss. Anaxagoras opens a broadcast channel, his voice echoing through every ship in the system. "This is Commodore Anaxagoras of the United Terran Confederation. Today we face an enemy that seeks to destroy all that we hold dear. They covet our technology, our knowledge, not understanding the responsibility that comes with such power." He pauses, his eyes distant. "But we understand. We know the sacrifices that must be made to protect the innocent, to safeguard the future, and that is a burden we bear willingly." The black hole looms ahead, a perfect circle of absolute darkness. The Zirathi dreadnought follows close behind, its weapons firing non-stop. Remember this day. Remember the indomitable spirit of humanity, the courage to stand against the darkness no matter the cost. And know that as long as that spirit endures, there will always be hope. The Olympus Mons crosses the event horizon, vanishing into the gravitational abyss. The Zirathi dreadnought, caught in its wake, follows a heartbeat later. In a flash of light, they are gone. On the bridges of the Magellan and the Saurian ship, Burns and Varys stare at the view screens in stunned silence. The magnitude of Anaxagoras' sacrifice, the weight of his final words, hangs heavy in the air. Burns is the first to speak, his voice rough with emotion. "We won't let it be in vain. We'll learn from this, build a better future. Together." Varys nods for once in complete agreement. The legacy of the United Terran Confederation will live on. We'll make sure of it. They set course for their respective homeworlds, the debris of the battlefield falling away behind them. The stars shine bright against the velvet black of space, eternal and unchanging. In their light, a promise is made, a vow to honor the sacrifices of the past, and to strive always for a brighter tomorrow. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.